You are now listening to The Unwavering, the movement dedicated to educating and empowering the brave men and women who have or are still serving our great nation. Thank you for tuning in for yet another episode of The Unwavering. As promised, we will be continuing off of the previous episode where I invited my good friend Zach, who is now a project manager in the defense industry, to give us a little bit more information about what it is that both civilians and veterans face when they're going through the hiring process, when they're going through interviews. But before we do that, as always, big thank you to those of you guys who are serving, both civilians and military, because I know there are a lot of guys who are actively deployed. I just recently spoke to a good friend of mine who's deploying this upcoming Monday to Afghanistan as a defense contractor. So Alan, if you are listening, man, huge shout out to you. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to Zach for those of you guys who may be listening to him for the first time, and have him introduce himself.
Hey, what's up? My name's Zach. I was a active duty Marine for 12 years, and since separating, I'm now working as a project manager in the defense industry.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. It is definitely a blessing to have you on here. So the last episode, we talked about your current role as a project manager, and it's funny to see the transition because I've always known that you were an incredible leader, that you were able to put yourself in the shoes of the people you were leading. Never once do I think that there was ever a time where you felt superior to anyone. You always treated everyone as an equal. Yes, there were times where you had to be stern and you had to hold people accountable, but you found the perfect balance of being able to manage people and being an excellent leader. So it's no surprise to me that as young as you are, an organization has hired you on to be a project manager. So being a project manager, can you kind of like walk us through what that's like? What are some of the things that you deal with aside from just the hiring process? What is it like to lead these individuals? Is it like when you were in the military as a staff sergeant, or is it a completely separate ballpark?
Honestly, it's the same process now that I did as an active duty Marine. I was taught early in the military that people were your most important asset. Without people, or without taking care of your people, the job won't get done. So that's kind of my mantra, I guess you could say, that I utilized while I was in the Marines. And I find now I still use it. Being a program manager is a lot like being in the military or being that senior leader in the military, because you're in charge of a team. I manage 8 to 10 people on a certain project, and everybody's different. So the key to it is knowing people, know how to motivate them, know how to get across to them and treat them like a human being. That way they can produce. I'm a project manager, but I don't know anything about contracts. I have a guy that all he does is contracts, government contract. Then you have engineers, and engineers are their own breed of people, super, super smart, but they have no relation to time. Then you have logisticians and all these different groups. And really, my job is to just make sure that everybody works together and we get everything done at a certain time, just like in the military.
Yeah, I preach it all the time. There's so many things that we learn in the military that directly correlate to what you're going to be doing in the future. At some point after your military service, you're going to have to work as part of a team. You're going to have to work with different people that you may get along with great and other ones that you may have a really difficult time. So learning how to understand that everyone is different, everyone is concerned about different things, and you're not the smartest person in the world. At one point or another, you will have to rely on a team is huge. Now that I'm working with engineers, technicians, QA, project managers, so on and so forth, I tell them every single day, I'm not the smartest dude in this room by any means. And I've said this when I was in the military all the time. I'm not the smartest person, but I'm just willing to work well with others. Even if we do have our differences, I think I do a pretty decent job of at least hearing people out and understanding that they probably bring something to the table that I don't. So if I don't utilize that, we won't get things done like we should. There's tons of times where I ask the technicians, hey, from my standpoint as quality assurance, I'm not really certain about this. Have you performed this action before? Is this something you're comfortable with? Is there anything you would do differently than what the engineers are saying? And that's really what it is. It's all of us coming together and saying, okay, this is what we have written down. This is what we need to follow. But at the same time, are we being realistic, or are there things that we're leaving out? Is there something that needs to change in order to protect the hardware, to protect the people, and get the mission accomplished at the same time? So yes, from my standpoint, I feel the exact same way. My time time in the military as a sergeant is so similar to my time now working in a team environment, because there's lots of things that I refer to. Some of the lessons that you taught me, some of the things that I've learned from peers, superiors, and juniors while I was in the military are things that I try and incorporate now in my processes as a quality assurance representative. So I completely agree with you on that. So, Zach, in the previous episode, you gave us 2 tidbits as to things that people do right and people do wrong when they're going through the hiring process. I want to get as many answers out of you as I possibly can and share it with the people, because it's a very unique opportunity for us to get to ask you these questions and for us to know when we're going through the hiring process, when we're at transition courses or seminars or job fairs, what you guys are looking for. So can you kind of give us a few more things that you've seen at these seminars while you've interviewed people that you think are both good and bad for not just military members, but civilians as well?
It's really eye-opening, for sure, seeing things that veterans do, good and bad, and what non-veterans do, good and bad. When I was first hired on, I was, Nick the new guy. It was better to be seen than heard. So I just go to conferences, we go to Fort Worth, Connecticut, and all those other stuff, places to go sit in on conferences so I could see the process and see how everything works. And me just sitting there observing everything was really interesting. And you could see it sometimes when these people are presenting.
What are you talking there? Their haircuts, their lapel pins. What are we getting at?
Yeah,
here?
Haircuts. You'd have people presenting that still rocking the high and unnecessaries.
High and tight for all you guys listening, but yes, definitely unnecessary.
Unnecessary. So military haircuts, or they'd have the U.S. Air Force retired lanyard with an Air Force lapel pin and Air Force class ring. You know what I mean? Like, be proud of your military service for sure. But you don't still be a walking billboard for that branch of the military. The way they talk. I remember very clearly one guy, he comes up to talk about a tech refresh portion of a program I manage. And
what's a tech refresh for all the listeners?
Say you have a old school Vizio TV, the first edition flat screen. A tech refresh would be the new QLED TV, just new technology.
Okay, so updating to the latest technology.
And he would sit there and be, no joke, this is how it went. He's like, no, this is the best equipment you're going to get. You understand that? No way you're going to find anything better than that. You know what I'm saying? You understand that? Freaking doggone. And I was like, man, this dude is a Marine. He was a Marine and he can't let it go. I found it comical, but what really stuck out in my mind is everybody else in the conference room was uncomfortable because he was barking at him. Now, he knew his stuff. He was very smart, but the way he portrayed that information, the way he was portraying the work that he'd done instantly turned everybody off. The VP of the company was in the room with him and he felt uncomfortable. And that really was a turnoff for sure. There's an example of the veteran not doing something good. I've seen veterans who I couldn't even tell you were veterans that I interviewed even by looking at them because they grew their hair out, had a full beard. I interviewed one dude, his hair had grown down to his shoulder blades, a real surfer looking guy, but he was super calm, super cool, collected, really just handled himself really well. And I had completely overlooked in his resume that he was a Army veteran. If I'm not mistaken, he'd been in for 7 years, 8 years. And I had never known, which is really nice because when I interview people to come onto my team, I bring the whole team in with me and we all sit there and listen. And everybody there was comfortable, liked him, and he eventually got the job.
So again, that kind of ties back to what we said before, where it's when you guys had this panel of individuals, you were looking for someone who fits your culture, someone who brings everything you guys need to the table to make the team successful, technical skills, knowledge, experience, but how they carried themselves and how they were able to relate to others added a good amount of weight in his favor, right?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And that's why I bring the whole team with me to interview because I want the whole team to be there. That way we get a consensus from the whole team if we think that person's going to fit. I think that's very important. But the fact that he was relatable, and he had never done anything that he was hired on to do, but his strengths from his military service is really what landed him the job. He was able to be groomed. He understood that he didn't know it maybe, but was willing to learn and to work at it. So
yeah, people not being so set in their ways that they can adapt or learn something new. That's the people I naturally gravitate towards on the projects that I work on and support, is the people that know they don't know everything, but super eager to learn and willing to be mentored, because let's be honest, everyone learns things at a different time. You may have someone who is fresh out of college, super young, and they're willing to learn, which is incredible. You may have someone who is 30 and is just at that point. They are barely learning how to use a wrench. And it sounds funny, but it's so true. People learn at different times, and you have to be understanding of that and know that just because they don't know everything right now does not mean that they won't be a good fit for your organization. I'm glad that you mentioned that. What about civilians? My primary goal is to bridge the gap. I want us to realize that we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and by us learning from each other, we can help both sides, veteran and non-veteran. So from your experience, what about that new guy that just gets out of school, or someone who maybe worked in the industry but never had any military service? What are some things that they did good and things that they did bad?
It's the same idea as a veteran, good and bad. You know what I mean? With a veteran, as I stated earlier, you come in too gung-ho and you turn everybody off. As a civilian or a non-veteran, I've seen the same thing happen. You get somebody who just graduated from college that has a degree, which is awesome, and come into the interview, act like they deserve the job already because they have that piece of paper, or act like they're the smartest person in the room. I had one guy, he automatically assumed he was smarter than myself and everybody else in the room, and would make condescending little remarks or kind of like body language. Not what you want to do. But I've also seen it to where they come in knowing that they had that piece of paper, that awesome degree. And like you said, they don't really know anything about the actual job, but are willing to learn. They have a degree in accounting, but maybe they're applying for a contracting job, both dealing with numbers. They're obviously very good at numbers, so they got an accounting degree, but they didn't go the accountant route. But we're willing to learn the contracting side of the world because they are good with numbers. So I think being broad with the college degree, and just like the military, taking what you learned in college and what you did in college, being more broad about it. That way you can reach out and touch different fields that maybe don't necessarily go with that degree path you chose is a good thing. You might find out that you didn't want to be an accountant, that you're completely happier doing something else.
It's funny because I think as time has progressed, I've kind of figured those things out about myself. You obviously know, and you've kind of seen the transition, how I used to view things when it came to work in my professional life and kind of how I view them now. And I want to say that it's never too late to change your mind. If you guys who are listening, again, veteran, non-veteran, it doesn't matter. You're going to school, you're getting an education, and you decide, hey, you know what? I just finished this degree, but it's not necessarily my passion. It's not what I want to do. But if I go get my master's degree, I'll be safe. I'll have a good job. If that's the route you want to take, by all means. But I personally don't think it's ever too late to learn something new, to take a chance on something that may bring you more happiness and more opportunity in the future. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I did quality assurance in the military. I'm still currently doing it. But as time has progressed, I've started different businesses, started working on this podcast. I've realized that quality assurance has been incredible and has led to some great opportunities and me meeting some very good people that I know will always be a part of my life, but it's not my passion. I've discovered over time that my passion has been for a very long time and always will be people. And that's really why I wanted to do this podcast. I want to help people and let them know that if you're 18 years old, if you're 36 years old, it's never too late to take a risk and follow your dreams. I know it sounds cheesy, but that's truly what I want to do, is hopefully have an impact on the people listening. Hopefully throughout one of these episodes, we say something that gives them the strength or the courage to follow their dreams and do what it is that they want to do, not what their parents told them to do, not what the university or their mentors told them to do. Take a risk and do what it is that you want to do. You know, it may work out, it may not, but I think the only reason I've gotten to where I'm at is because I've made so many mistakes. Not because I'm smart, but because I'm a knucklehead and I usually tend to go against the grain, but it's helped me realize what I really want to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just in the time I've known you, I've seen you, learning something new, but I think more so I saw you explore different things, explore different opportunities. You'd get this weird idea in your head that you want to go do something with a drone. And then you're like, well, if I did something with a drone, I could do this. And I watch you branch out, and actually we both branched out on that one together. And you exploring all these different things, I think, is what led you to where you're at now. And I think that's important for everybody. Is you don't need to up and quit initially what you're doing now, but explore new things and figure out what it is that you want to do, or what career field, what hobbies. Just touching different things is how you start.
Yeah, and don't let fear determine your actions or your future, because like Zach said, I was all over the place. I mean, there was a time, like he said, my focus was 100% drones. There was another time where I thought that I wanted to go work on Wall Street and just do finances and stocks. There was another time where I started working for someone who was running running for Congress. And I thought, you know what, maybe me getting into politics is what I want to do. And maybe that's what I'm good at. Completely wrong. But again, all of those, I wouldn't even consider them failures, but all of those experiences have told me, you know what, that's not for you. But at least now you have an understanding of that. Now you know that those aren't things that you want to do. So you can start to narrow it down to what you're good at or what you really want to do, which, like I said, up to this point has led me to believe that my true passion and pursuit in the future will be in empowering people and helping people. You know, maybe it's going to take you guys failing a bunch of times and doing completely random things, having just the most outlandish ideas. Hopefully you have some good friends like Zach who are willing to put up with you as you change your idea every 6 months to a year. But moving forward, so yeah, I think that's really cool that you have that insight now that you're in a position where you see both sides of the spectrum. But the one thing that stood out to me, and again, this is tying back to a previous episode where we talked about managers versus leaders. The thing that stood out to me in this conversation, and this is the first time you and I have really discussed kind of in detail your work or some of the things that you look for, was when you said, when you interview people, you invite the whole team to be a part of that process. Yes, I guess technically you're the lead, but that's one thing that people don't really think about is just because you're the lead, that doesn't make you better than anyone else. It just means you have more responsibility on your plate. Everyone on the team, technician, engineer, quality assurance, project manager, you all play a role in a much bigger mission, in a much bigger goal. So I think it's incredible that you give your guys the opportunity to have their voices heard. And that's not to say that, you know, you're always going to agree with what they have to say, but at least you opening up the door and saying, hey, you know what, this is our team, not just my team. We all have a say, probably lets them know that this is an organization that they want to work for and want to contribute and be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say I'm the boss of my team, but I have a boss that I report to as well. And if my team is not producing, then I'm the one that's held accountable for it. And I'm going to be the one that's chewed out. So
yeah, but I know you will. And I know that you don't mind getting chewed out because I don't know how many times you've gotten chewed out for me in the past.
That's true.
So.
That's true. But you know what I mean? Like, people are your most important asset. If your team isn't working, isn't producing, then you're not going to get very far either. So why not have everybody come in, everybody have a say or see who it is that's going to be there and ask questions, because they all have to work together too. And, you know, engineers think very differently than finance people. And if you have two people that can't work together, then nothing's ever going to get done. Yeah. So that's why I feel it's important.
That is very true. Well, before we go ahead and end this episode, as always, I want to open up the opportunity for you to say a little piece. What is it, whether it's something that, you know, you heard during this episode that we talked about that kind of sparked your interest, or what is one more thing that you can give the listeners to make a difference when they're going through that interview process? More than just, hey, don't have a high and tight, maybe even a few things that you can think of that can truly make a difference, them and how they carry themselves and how they're viewed by the employers.
Couple things. Image, for sure. Dress the part. If you're showing up to an interview, you need to look presentable because you're going to be potentially hired to represent a company. 2, just honestly be yourself. You're going to be worked up. You're going to be nervous, but don't forget to say good morning. Hey, how you doing? Or thank them for their time. Body language goes a long way in an interview. So smile. It's definitely okay to put a little joke in there. If somebody asks you a pointed question, be like, it's okay to say something funny. If anything, it's going to make the whole room ease up and the whole process be easier for you. I guess what I'm trying to say is just be a person, be a normal person, you know, come in there and, you know, just have good manners.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you again for tuning in to this episode. We appreciate you guys taking the time to listen, and hopefully something that Zach said during this episode sparks something in you guys. Hopefully it leads to you guys getting more callbacks from employers, you know, more opportunities at interviews and things like that. If you guys have any questions, whether it's, hey, can you take a look at my resume, or do you guys know anyone in the industry, you guys know how to reach us. You can link up with us on Facebook, any social media platform, and ask us those questions. I promise you one of us will get back to you and do what we can to help you, because that's what it's all about, is taking care of each other and making sure that we set one another up for success, just like people did for us. Thanks for listening to The Unwavering. Please rate and comment on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star and a great comment, and we may just read it on a future episode. Also, follow us on social platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Be sure to check back with us next week.